So, what would you think of a book that started like this? Scientists have discovered a revolutionary new treatment that makes you live longer. It enhances your memory and it makes you more creative. It makes you look more attractive. It keeps you slim and lowers food cravings. It protects you from cancer and dementia. It even wards off colds and the flu. It can lower your risk of heart attack and diabetes. You'll even feel happier, less depressed, and less anxious. Are you interested? So, sounds like bullshit, right? Or hyperbolic, as Matthew Walker puts it in his book, Why We Sleep, Unlocking the Power of Sleep and Dreams. But it's actually not. It's a description of the benefits that you can obtain from getting a full night of rest. Sleep is one of the few habits that none of us can really break. Everyone needs it. You know right away when you don't get enough of it. But for some reason, most of us still don't sleep enough each night. Why is that? And why is sleep so important? Well, I couldn't think of a better topic and a better book to start this channel than Matthew Walker's Why We Sleep. Let's talk about some of those questions. So, what should sleep actually look like for most of us? And why should we listen to the author on this topic? Well, Matthew Walker is an English professor of neuroscience and psychology at the University of California, Berkeley. He's the founder of the Center for Sleep Science, and he's a sleep scientist at Google, where he helps, quote, the scientific exploration of the sleep in health and disease, end quote. He became much more widely known when Why We Sleep was published in 2017 and became a bestseller. He's appeared on podcasts. You may have seen him on Joe Rogan in 2018. And needless to say, he appears to be somewhat of an expert on the topic. He said, I am, quote, in love with everything sleep is and does. This love affair has now spanned a 20-plus year research career. However, some of the sweeping conclusions that the author comes to in Why We Sleep are not without controversy. But back to sleep itself. So we all know that we're supposed to get approximately 8 hours of the stuff, ideally. But there are actually two main factors that determine when you want to sleep and when you want to be awake. That is the circadian rhythm and adenosine, or sleep pressure. Now, the circadian rhythm is found in every creature on the planet, and it acts kind of like a clock that makes you feel tired or alert at regular intervals throughout the day. This controls when you want to eat, when you want to drink, when you get tired, your body temperature, your mood, among other things. We keep this rhythm internally, but it actually runs a little bit longer than a full day, so it needs to be reset every once in a while in order to keep the same schedule. And that's where daylight comes in. Now, the actual brain structure is called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and it's found just above the crossing point of your optical nerves, and it's placed there so that it can monitor signals of light coming from your eyes. Now, that circadian rhythm that controls your wakefulness and when you're sleepy is not the same for each person. There are actually three different types of schedules that people fall into. First of all, there's the morning larks, or the morning types. These are people who get up early and, as a result, tend to go to sleep earlier as well. That's about 40% of the population. After that, we'll find the evening types, another 30% of us. These are people who get up later in the day and, as a result, stay up later. Finally, there are those who fall in between these two types, with a slight leaning towards the evening type, which is the remaining 30% of people. Now, the author really wants to stress that this is not a choice. It is a genetic makeup. You don't pick whether you're a morning type, an evening type, or somewhere in between. Unfortunately, society has kind of missed the memo on this, because you can see a lot of jobs and schools tend to favor morning types with their start times. And unfortunately, this leads to a lot of night owls who are forced into an unnatural sleep and wake pattern. But we'll touch more on this a little bit later. Now, that other factor that determines when you want to fall asleep is called sleep pressure. From the moment you wake up, a chemical called adenosine builds up inside your brain. This chemical increases your desire to sleep, and it simultaneously dampens the parts of your brain that promote wakefulness. This leads to eventually an irresistible urge to fall asleep, usually after 12 to 15 hours. Now, we have a widely used drug for blocking this pressure, caffeine, which Walker unflatteringly describes as, quote, the most widely used and abused psychoactive stimulant in the world, end quote. and, quote, the second most traded commodity on the planet after oil, end quote. So caffeine basically takes up the receptors in your brain, which would be welcoming sleep pressure, and it masks that buildup as it keeps going. That's the key point. The pressure keeps building, whether you realize it or not. And so as the caffeine is taking up these receptors, that pressure is building and building and building. Eventually, when your liver is finally able to dismantle the caffeine, you're going to get hit not just with the sleep pressure that you were avoiding in the morning, but all that's built up since then. Now, without more caffeine, it's going to be extremely difficult to stay awake at this point. And a lot of people tend to drink more caffeine at this point, leading to a cycle of dependency. Now, besides blocking adenosine and making sleep pressure difficult to detect, caffeine also takes a really long time to be fully processed by your body. About 5 to 7 hours for half of it to get removed. This is long enough for most people to fail to see the link between the masking effects of the drug and the previous sleepy state that they've been trying to avoid. This is what quickly leads to a cycle of dependency. So why do we sleep so much? Remember all those benefits I mentioned at the beginning of the video? Does sleep actually do all those things? Well, it turns out there are 4 stages of sleep, and each one provides benefits for your brain throughout the night. This also means that you really need to get all 4 stages for your brain to be functioning optimally. So say, for example, you're trying to remember the fact that the half-life of caffeine is 5 to 7 hours. Sleep can help you remember this fact, but it actually starts before you even learned it. Sleep the night before, when you first learn some kind of fact or text-based information, gets temporarily stored in hippocampus, part of the brain for short-term memory. Now, space here is limited, but it is actually sleep that naturally clears this space up so that you can add these new memories. And this specifically happens during the stage 2 NREM sleep cycle, part of the non-dreaming phase. Now, when you sleep the night after learning that fact about caffeine, sleep provides protection against forgetting this fact through consolidation. Once again, during that deep NREM sleep state, you get the best benefit to memory retention. That's because these memories that are stored in the hippocampus are moved from this temporary area to the long-term storage area of the brain called the cortex. Now, not only is this information stored long-term, but you've also cleared out the short-term area for learning new information the following day. Now, one benefit we might not associate sleep with, or memory for that matter, is being able to actually forget the things that we need to forget. Whether it's a new password that you need to replace with your old one, or forgetting painful memories that no longer do us any good, we need to forget things just to function day to day. By forgetting no longer relevant info, we can clear those brain resources for retrieving memories that we actually want to keep. Okay, so clearly sleep is important, and the benefits are far more compelling than most of us realize. But what are the actual consequences of losing sleep? So a few of the conditions linked to sleep loss include neurological and psychiatric conditions like Alzheimer's disease, anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, suicide, stroke, and chronic pain. And physiological disorders like heart attack, diabetes, cancer, weight gain, obesity, and immune deficiency. Perhaps the most apparent consequence of sleep deprivation is drowsy driving accidents. These happen for 2 reasons, either just falling asleep at the wheel completely or what's called microsleeps occurring. Microsleeps are, quote, a momentary lapse in concentration, end quote, and typically occur in people getting consistently less than 7 hours of sleep a night. Just a few seconds of this can have deadly consequences on the road, even at relatively low speeds. And according to a study, getting 4 hours of sleep 6 nights in a row is the equivalent of not sleeping for 24 hours straight, a 400% increase in microsleeps. Now, maybe you're someone who typically gets 6 hours of sleep a night. Well, all it takes is 10 days to equal the performance of an individual who hasn't slept for 24 hours. A study conducted by AAA found that on less than 5 hours of sleep, your risk of crashing your car increases 3 times over. Another key finding from these studies has shown that participants consistently underestimated their degree of performance disability. So people simply don't understand how sleep deprived they are. Walker states that, quote, 60 years of scientific research prevents me from accepting anyone who tells me that he or she can get on by just with 4 to 5 nights of sleep a night just fine, end quote. He goes on to state that the most important point he hopes readers will take from this book is, quote, "If you are drowsy while driving, please stop. It is lethal. To carry the burden of another's life on your shoulders is a terrible thing. Some people only get one chance to fall asleep at the wheel before losing their life." End quote. So what does the author advise that we do if we are feeling drowsy at the wheel? First, stop for the night. If you simply must continue that night, he recommends that you pull over and take a 20 to 30 minute nap. And when you awake, don't start driving right away. You're still going to be under the effects of sleep inertia, which is the carryover effects of sleep to wakefulness. The author states that you should wait another 20 to 30 minutes for this effect to pass before continuing, and that even this is only going to be a temporary reprieve before you get tired again and need to stop once more and rest. He ultimately concludes that it's just not worth it to drive while sleepy. There is so much information that's useful and I think important in this book, but I thought chapter 13 in particular really stood out. I'd like to break down these 5 key factors that have changed modern sleep for the worse. These factors are regularized temperatures in buildings, constant electric and LED lighting, caffeine, alcohol, as well as the effects on the physiological state of the body due to alarm clocks and the snooze button. So Walker offers potential solutions for each of these areas. First, remember the suprachiasmatic nucleus? Well, the loss of daylight signals to this part of the brain that it's time for rest, and so our body releases melatonin, which is the chemical that actually helps us know this. Now, electric lights, and particularly LED lights, are really disruptive to this process. They interrupt the cycle by mimicking daylight. So the blue light from LEDs is especially bad. It can have twice the harmful effect of some of the incandescent bulbs that we might use around our homes in the evenings. Now, unfortunately for myself, as someone who really likes to browse and read his iPad before bed, it's been shown that the iPad can suppress melatonin by up to 50%. Not good. Now, the author suggests that you use some dimmer lights in the rooms that you spend your evenings in, as well as maybe acquiring blackout curtains for your bedroom to keep out that harsh morning light before you want to wake up. And he finally talks about those LED devices. Usually, especially iPhones, iPads, Macs, they have a mode called night shift, which actually filters out some of that really harmful blue light. I think Android phones also have an equivalent. So temperature is the other major factor to influence the timing of the suprachiasmatic nucleus and its release of melatonin. Now, your core body temperature actually needs to decrease by about 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit, or 1 degree Celsius, to go to sleep successfully. Now, this is why you might have noticed that it's easier to fall asleep in a room that's colder rather than too hot. This decrease in temperature is detected through the hypothalamus, which is conveniently located right next to the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the brain. Once the temperature is decreased, the suprachiasmatic nucleus uses this signal in combination with daylight and to release melatonin. And this is what puts you to sleep. Now, our ancient ancestors were at the whim of the day and night cycle. So when the lights went out, they went to bed. In modern times, we have temperature-controlled homes where we can prevent this natural dip in temperature, as well as lighting, from happening. Now, Walker states that the recommended temperature to sleep in for humans these days is actually 65 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a lot cooler than the typical room that you'll find in a lot of homes. I think most people keep their thermostats to 70 to 72 degrees. Yeah, I always did when I was growing up. So if it seems crazy to sleep in colder temperatures like this, think about if you've ever enjoyed the feeling of taking a hot bath or a hot shower before you go to bed. So what's actually happening here is that warm water, when it touches the surface of your skin, it dilates the blood vessels, which just causes more blood to rush to the surface level. When you get out of the shower, because your blood is closer to the surface, you actually expand and dissipate heat a lot more quickly and efficiently. This causes your core body temperature to plummet, hence better sleep. Alcohol affects sleep in 2 different ways. First, it fragments it, causing you to wake up throughout the night, not getting that uninterrupted bout of sleep that is most healthy. Then it also suppresses the deep dreaming state, or REM sleep. Without going into the detail that the book does on this, it's devastating to lose out on this sleep. And you don't have to abuse alcohol to actually suffer the consequences. New memories can be lost following a night of drinking, even up to 3 nights after they were first learned. So for the students out there, it might be best to avoid drinking the week of your finals or midterm exams. Now, as we've already discussed, Matthew Walker does not have kind things to say regarding caffeine. In the interest of time, let's summarize by seeing what you may already know. Try to avoid drinking caffeinated beverages after noon or late in the afternoon. It can take up to 8 hours for your body to process this chemical. And if you're drinking coffee in the afternoon or in the evening, you will likely be affecting the sleep processes that we've already discussed. The last modernity-induced sleep terror that we've grown accustomed to is the alarm clock. If you compare the effects of waking up to an alarm clock versus that of a natural awakening state, you'll see a significant spike in blood pressure and heart rate caused by the fight or flight response in the nervous system. Now, even worse, many of us multiply this effect by hitting the snooze button, which causes us to go through that process again, oftentimes multiple times throughout the morning. This adds a tremendous amount of stress to the body and the nervous system over the course of a lifetime. Walker's suggestions? Well, the top priority should be to attempt to wake up at the same time every day. This is actually one of the most effective treatments that Walker states for treating patients with insomnia. Now, most people will have to use an alarm clock to accomplish this. So here Walker advocates for disabling that snooze button, and then perhaps coming up with a more interesting solution for making sure you get out of bed, like placing your phone or whatever alarm you're using not within reach of where you sleep, maybe on a dresser or across the room, or even in another room if you're sure you're going to hear it. Now, me personally, I just use my Apple Watch. It has haptic feedback, which gently taps my wrist in the morning when I want to wake up. But then I also have my phone alarm set to go off 5 minutes afterwards, just as an emergency backup. So I could go on discussing sections of this book which fascinated me, like the chapters on dreaming and its many benefits, or the evolutionary history of sleep across different species, or how the author envisions the changes that we need in our society to sleep better. But before I go on, I do want to address some of the criticisms that have been levied against this book. My extensive research on the Wikipedia entry for Why We Sleep led me to a blog post by one Alexei Guzzi, probably not saying that right, and quote, independent researcher with a background in economics, end quote, who wrote a blog post titled, Matthew Walker's Why We Sleep is Riddled with Scientific Errors. Now, Guzzi states that he spent over 130 hours writing this blog post, and in it he disputes numerous claims in Walker's books and gives examples of misrepresentation of cited research, erroneous claims, and cherry-picking data from a graph to support the author's thesis. Now, Guzzi shared an email from a sleep coach that he received after he published his blog post, in which the sleep coach mentions stories he's heard of people who previously had slept really well with less than 8 hours of sleep. And when they read Walker's book, they became anxious and they tried desperately to achieve that recommended 8 hours, leading to frustration, anxiety, and ultimately, and ironically, a loss of sleep. Now, for this video, I've just tried to include information that seems verifiable and accurate, and tips and recommendations from the author that I found helpful. Despite the criticism, I really would recommend reading the book if you just want to understand sleep better. Just know that if you are experiencing issues with sleep, you probably should be speaking with a sleep doctor and not relying on information from Walker's book to address the issue. Hey everyone, forgot to mention something in the video. Well, first of all, this is me just finishing editing, so I'm about to post it to YouTube. Pretty exciting, first video. I did forget to mention that there's going to be a book giveaway. So I have a paperback copy that I'd like to send out to a random comment. So I'm hoping to get at least one comment so someone can actually get a copy of this. And I think I'm going to do this for each of the book club videos that I put out once a month. And that's the other thing. I'm going to try to do one of these book club books once a month for at least the next year. And I'll have hopefully weekly videos in between, but they'll be a little bit different. Maybe other things I'm reading or other things I'm interested in. So I will announce the next book soon on my Instagram page, which you can see in the description below. So go ahead and follow me there if you want to get updates. And I'm going to post cool things from the books as I'm reading them. So I think it'll be pretty fun. And yeah, if you made it this far, thank you so much. You just watched a 20-minute YouTube video, so go outside, do something, get off the computer for a little bit maybe. You're crazy, but I really appreciate it. And thank you very much.